That Saturday was supposed to be perfect. We'd been planning my daughter Emma's 7th birthday for 3 months. Every little detail, the unicorn cake, the glittery invitations, the rented bounce house, all of it was meant to make her feel special. Because to me, she is special. But that's not how the day went. By noon, the backyard looked like something out of a Pinterest dream. Pastel colors, confetti, handmade cupcakes, even a banner that said "Happy Birthday, Emma." She stood there, wearing the sparkly pink dress her grandma had once bought her, waiting for people who never came. I told her, "Don't worry, sweetie, they're probably just running late," but deep down I already knew. They weren't coming, not my mom, not my 2 sisters, not a single cousin, and the worst part, they'd all promised they'd be there. My name's Claire, and I've spent most of my adult life doing what my family asked, babysitting my nieces, helping my sisters move, lending money I never saw again. I was the dependable one, the nice one. But after my divorce last year, everything changed. Suddenly, I wasn't the perfect one anymore. I was the single mom who needed help. My family never said it out loud, but I could feel the shift, the judgment in my mother's tone, the pitying glances from my sisters. Still, I didn't care. All I wanted was for my daughter to have a family that loved her. That's why this birthday mattered so much. It was Emma's first one since the divorce, and I wanted her to feel surrounded, loved, and celebrated. But as the hours passed, her smile began to fade. My mom, Linda, texted at 1:00 p.m. "Sorry, honey, something came up. I'll call tomorrow." Tomorrow. Always tomorrow. My older sister Tanya posted a story on Instagram that same hour, a brunch selfie with the caption, "Family first, 2 hearts, family first." Except apparently not our family. And my younger sister Melissa. She didn't even bother to reply. I remember staring at my phone, messages unanswered, my daughter's little face looking up at me asking, "Mommy, are they lost?" I wanted to lie. I wanted to tell her, "Yes, sweetheart, they're just stuck in traffic." But I couldn't because Emma's not stupid. She looked at the untouched cake and whispered, "They don't like me anymore, do they?" That sentence broke something inside me. I hugged her and told her that wasn't true, but the ache in my chest said otherwise. By 4 p.m., the candles melted into the frosting. The bounce house guy came to pack up early. Emma gave him a cupcake before he left. He was the only person who'd shown up. After she went to bed that night, I sat at the kitchen table and scrolled through my family's posts again. Smiles, wine glasses, laughter. None of them mentioned the party. None of them cared. I told myself to let it go, to not start a fight. But when I woke up the next morning, I had a text from Tanya. Not an apology, not even an excuse. Just this, "Hey, we need to talk about the money you owe us. Mom said you still haven't sent the $850 for last month's cabin rental. It's not fair to make us wait." I read it 3 times. I hadn't even gone on that trip. They'd planned it for the whole family, but never invited me after I told them I couldn't afford it. And now they wanted me to pay for it. Something wasn't adding up. I replied, "I wasn't even there, Tanya. Why would I owe you anything?" She read it instantly. No reply. 2 hours later, my mom sent me a message that made my stomach turn. "You better handle this before it gets ugly. We're serious, Claire." By evening, my phone buzzed again. This time it wasn't a message, it was a knock on the door. 2 uniformed officers stood outside. One of them spoke gently, "Ma'am, we received a call regarding a payment dispute within the family. Are you Claire Thompson?" I froze. The police for $850 I didn't even owe. I looked past the officers at my daughter's toys on the lawn, the leftover balloons fluttering weakly in the wind, and I felt something inside me harden. This wasn't a misunderstanding. It was a setup, and I didn't know why yet, but something told me this wasn't about money at all. It was about control, and this time I wasn't going to be their dorm at anymore. "Yes, officer." I said, keeping my voice steady. I'm Claire, and I think it's time someone finally heard my side of the story. The quiet woman they used to ignore had just found her voice. And my family had no idea what was coming next. The night the police showed up on my doorstep, I felt something inside me shift. Not because I was scared of them, but because I realized my own family had crossed a line I didn't even know existed. The officers were polite. They said there'd been a complaint about an unsettled financial agreement between family members. One officer even looked embarrassed, like he knew it was ridiculous. I explained everything calmly, how I hadn't gone on any cabin trip, how I didn't owe a cent, how the accusation was absurd. They nodded, took notes, and left after 5 minutes. But the humiliation stayed behind. My neighbors had seen the flashing lights. Emma had woken up halfway through, peeking through her bedroom curtain. She didn't say a word, just looked at me like she was trying to understand why people with badges were at her house on a Sunday night. That look, it burned through me. The next morning, my phone buzzed nonstop. My family group chat, the Thompsons read, was exploding. Tanya sent the first message. You didn't have to call the cops, Claire. We just wanted to settle it. Settle it? They called the police on me. I typed back, fingers shaking. You called them, not me. And you all know I don't owe that money. Within seconds, Melissa chimed in. You're being dramatic again. We all agreed you'd pay your share. My share. Of what? A trip I never went on. Mom finally entered the chat with her signature passive-aggressive tone. Claire, please, you've been so sensitive lately. This could have been handled privately. Handled privately? They'd just publicly sent officers to my door. That was the moment I noticed something strange. My messages were being deleted from the group. Not just unseen, gone. Whenever I replied, someone with admin rights would erase my responses. I was being silenced in my own family conversation. A digital version of what they'd always done in real life. I spent the next few days trying to make sense of the $1,850 accusation. So I called the cabin resort myself. The manager pulled up the records and confirmed my suspicion. Only 2 bookings under the Thompson family, ma'am. Paid by Tanya's credit card. Total cost, $1,850 already processed. Already paid. They weren't missing money. They were creating a debt. But why? The logical part of me tried to dismiss it. Maybe it was a misunderstanding. Maybe Tanya was just stressed. Maybe Mom was confused. But the emotional part of me, the daughter, the sister, the single mom, knew better. This wasn't about money. This was about power. They'd always treated me like the weak one. The one who needed guidance, charity, help. And when I stopped needing them after my divorce, when I finally stood on my own, they didn't like it. This was their way of putting me back in my place. On Tuesday, I got a voicemail from a number I didn't recognize. It was the police department again, the same officer from before. Ms. Thompson, we just wanted to confirm if you're available to come down tomorrow for a quick statement. Your mother mentioned there's been further financial confusion. My mother called again. I drove straight to her house. I didn't even text first. When she opened the door, she looked surprised, like she hadn't expected me to actually show up. Claire, she said softly, you should have called before coming. It's not a good time. Her living room was spotless, as always. Family portraits, candles, that perfect fake warmth. And there was Tanya, sitting on the couch, scrolling her phone like she owned the place. Why are you calling the police on me again? I asked, voice steady but sharp. Mom frowned, crossing her arms. Don't start. You made a scene last time. The officer just wanted to mediate. That's all, mediation, I repeated. For a lie, Tanya laughed without looking up. It's not a lie, Claire. You promised you'd chip in for the trip when you could. We just didn't think it would take 6 months. That's when I realized something. This wasn't confusion. This was coordination. They were working together, every word rehearsed, every tone controlled. And the strangest part, they weren't even angry. They were calm, too calm, like people who had already decided how this would end. 2 days later, Mom called again, this time sounding kind. "Sweetheart, let's just end this drama. If you send the money, I'll tell the police to drop it, no hard feelings." Her tone was syrupy. Sweet but suffocating. I took a deep breath. "You know I don't owe that money, Mom. Why are you doing this?" There was a pause, long, uncomfortable. Then she said something that made my stomach twist. "Claire, you've always had such a hard time taking responsibility. We're just trying to help you grow up, grow up." I was a single mother raising a daughter alone, paying my bills, rebuilding my life, and they were acting like I was still a child. That's when the fear turned into something else, exhaustion. The kind that comes when you realize you're not dealing with logic, but control. That weekend, I took Emma to the park. She was quiet, quieter than usual. Finally, she asked, "Mom, why doesn't Grandma like us anymore?" I froze. "Who told you that?" She looked down at her shoes. "Aunt Tanya said Grandma's mad because you don't share money with family. She said that's why no one came to my party." I didn't even realize I was crying until she hugged me. In that moment, every red flag came together. The fake debt, the deleted messages, the quiet manipulation. They weren't just punishing me. They were turning my daughter against me. That's when my heartbreak hardened into something sharp. They dragged a child, my child, into their mind games. And that meant one thing. This wasn't just family drama anymore. It was war. That night I couldn't sleep. I sat by my laptop, staring at all the screenshots I'd taken, the texts, the deleted messages, the call logs. I didn't know exactly what my family was after, but I knew this. They wanted control, and they were willing to ruin me to get it. But they underestimated me. They thought I'd cry, hide, apologize, but I'd learned something after years of being the quiet one. Silence isn't weakness. Sometimes it's just the space before you strike. So I started saving everything, building my own record just in case. I didn't know what they were planning next, but I could feel it. Something bigger was coming, and this time I wouldn't be caught off guard. Because when your own family turns you into an enemy, you stop waiting for love and you start preparing for truth. I didn't realize how deep it went until the letter came. It arrived on a Wednesday afternoon, plain white envelope, no return address, but the handwriting was unmistakable. My mother's perfect cursive, the kind she used to sign birthday cards and grocery lists. For a moment, I thought maybe it was an apology, some kind of attempt to make peace after weeks of tension and humiliation. But the letter inside wasn't an apology. It was a bill, a printed invoice with the cabin company's logo, typed up and dated 2 months prior. Amount due $1, $850, and at the bottom, a typed note. Per agreement with Linda Thompson, you are responsible for your share of the family retreat cost. Failure to pay will result in legal collection. Legal collection. I stared at it for a full minute before the truth started to sink in. My mother had given the company my name as a paying participant in a trip I never attended, and signed a payment agreement on my behalf. That's when it clicked. The fake debt, the police visit, the family confusion. It was all part of the same setup. They hadn't just accused me of owing money. They'd made it official. I drove straight to the cabin resort again. The same manager was on duty, and when I showed him the invoice, he frowned. "Ma'am, yes, I remember that name. Linda Thompson added you as a third party to the booking. She said you'd reimburse her directly. That's standard procedure for group reservations." I swallowed hard, and she signed for me. He looked at the form, nodding. "That's her signature." We assumed you'd given permission. She even provided your driver's license number." My stomach dropped. My license number, how would she even? And then I remembered. Last year, after my divorce, I had moved back in with my mom for a few months. During that time, she'd helped me update some paperwork, including my driver's license renewal. I'd handed her my information without a second thought. I'd trusted her. She had used it, used my identity to sign a contract, create a debt, and send the police to enforce it. And the worst part, she'd done it with a smile, pretending it was all just family business. I showed up at her house that night, no warning, no texts. I didn't even knock, I just walked in. She was sitting at the kitchen table with Tanya and Melissa, sipping tea like it was any other evening. When they saw me, the air froze. Mom sighed. "Claire, if this is about the money again." I slammed the invoice on the table. "You forged my name," Tanya's smirk faltered. Melissa glanced away. Mom leaned back in her chair, unbothered. "Don't be dramatic. I handled the booking. You said you'd contribute once things got better financially. I just took care of it." My voice shook. "I never said that. You lied. You signed my name." Her tone turned icy, the same voice that had once scolded me for talking back as a kid. "Watch your tone, Claire. You've been ungrateful long enough. We covered for you for years your mistakes, your debts, your failed marriage." I interrupted her. "You mean the marriage where my husband cheated, and you told me to just forgive him because men do that?" The room went silent. Mom's eyes flashed with something sharp, not guilt, but anger. "I tried to keep this family together, and you've done nothing but tear it apart. You should be thanking me for even including you in anything after the embarrassment you caused us." "The embarrassment I caused," I whispered. "You forged my name, stole my information, and called the police on me, and I'm the embarrassment." Tanya stood up, stepping in between us. "Stop yelling at Mom. She's been stressed enough. You could have just paid it, Claire. It's not even that much money." I stared at her, disbelief turning into something darker. "You were in on it, weren't you?" Tanya didn't answer. She didn't have to. I turned to Melissa, my quiet younger sister, but she just looked down, unable to meet my eyes. And that's when I realized the full truth. This wasn't just Mom's betrayal, it was all of them. I went home shaking, furious, humiliated. I couldn't make sense of it, the money, the fake debt, the lies. Why would my own family do this? And then, 2 nights later, the missing piece arrived in the mail. A letter from a lawyer, not mine, Mom's. It was addressed to all 3 of her daughters. A notice of inheritance restructuring. Apparently, my mother had decided to adjust her estate, transferring the family home and her remaining savings to Tanya and Melissa as joint beneficiaries. I was listed as ineligible due to outstanding personal debts owed to the family. The outstanding debt. The fake dollar one, $850, that was their plan, to make me look financially irresponsible, to create a paper trail of unpaid obligations that would justify cutting me out of everything. They weren't just trying to take my money, they were erasing me from the family entirely. I sat at my kitchen table with the letter trembling in my hands, every word blurring from tears. I'd always been the one who showed up, the one who helped, the one who believed family meant something. When Tanya's husband lost his job, I loaned her rent money. When Melissa dropped out of college, I found her work. When Mom was sick, I moved back home to take care of her, and this was how they repaid me, by turning my kindness into weakness, by using my trust as a weapon. It wasn't just betrayal, it was identity theft in every sense. They had taken my name, my reputation, my place in the family, and tried to make it disappear under a pile of lies. That night, I cried until I couldn't anymore. Then I looked at the pile of documents spread across the table. The fake invoice, the lawyer's letter, the police record, and something inside me hardened. The heartbreak didn't go away. It transformed into purpose. I called the police station the next morning. The same officer who had visited my house weeks ago. "Officer," I said quietly, "I think I need to file a report, not about money, about fraud." He listened, his tone changing as I explained everything: the forged signature, the false report, the identity misuse. Then he said words that made my heart pound. "Ms. Thompson, if you can prove that your information was used without consent, this isn't a civil matter anymore. It's criminal. Criminal." For the first time, the power shifted even slightly in my favor. I spent the rest of the day organizing everything: screenshots, texts, voice messages, documents, every little breadcrumb of deceit. I didn't know yet how I'd fight back, but I knew I would. Because this wasn't just about $1,850 anymore. It was about showing my daughter that you don't let anyone, not even family, rewrite your story. That evening, I tucked Emma into bed. She looked at me with her wide brown eyes and said softly, "Mom, are we okay?" I smiled, though my heart ached. "We're going to be better than okay." As she drifted to sleep, I sat at my laptop, the glow reflecting off the tear stains still on my cheeks. I started typing an email not to my mother, not to my sisters, but to someone who could finally make this right. A lawyer, and as my fingers hit send, I whispered to myself, "You wanted to treat me like the weak one. Fine. Let's see how you handle the quiet one when she finally fights back." The betrayal had broken me, but it also built something stronger than fear: resolve. The day I found out my own mother had forged my name and rewritten her will to erase me, something inside me died. But what replaced it wasn't emptiness, it was clarity. For the first time in years, I wasn't confused about where I stood in my family. I wasn't the black sheep, I wasn't the disappointment. I was the target, the one they thought was too kind, too soft, too silent to ever fight back. And maybe they were right once, but not anymore. Because I'd realized something that day, sitting at my kitchen table, surrounded by forged invoices and legal letters. If they could turn family into a weapon, then I could turn truth into armor. The realization came the night I tucked my daughter, Emma, into bed. She held her stuffed unicorn tight and said in her sleepy voice, "Mommy, are we going to Grandma's for Thanksgiving?" My chest tightened. "No, sweetheart, not this year." Her eyes opened. "Because Grandma's mad at us." It wasn't anger that filled me, it was shame. Shame that my own child thought love came with conditions. I kissed her forehead and whispered, "We don't visit people who hurt us, baby, even if they're family." She nodded quietly and rolled over, but I stayed there for a moment, watching her breathe, realizing that she was the only person who'd never lied to me. And that's when it hit me. If I didn't stop my family now, if I let them get away with this, Emma would grow up thinking it was normal to be treated like this. To be manipulated, to be silenced. That was the moment I decided I would fight back, not out of revenge, out of protection for me, for her. The next morning, I woke up with a kind of calm I hadn't felt in weeks. It wasn't happiness, it was focus. I brewed a cup of coffee, sat down at my laptop, and opened a blank document. At the top, I typed, "Family Fraud Evidence Log." It felt strange, labeling my own family like criminals. But that's exactly what they were. I began listing every piece of proof. The forged signature on the cabin invoice. The police incident report filed using my name. The group chat screenshots showing messages they deleted. The inheritance letter citing outstanding debts, and the voicemail recordings of my mother and sisters trying to pressure me. Each item made my chest ache, but I kept going. Because for the first time, I wasn't crying while writing, I was documenting. I was building my case, and I didn't just want to win legally. I wanted them to understand what it felt like to be powerless, and then watch that power crumble in their own hands. Later that week, I met with my lawyer, a woman named Angela Rivera. She had kind eyes but a voice that could slice through stone. After I told her everything, she sat quietly for a long moment. Then she said, "Claire, what your mother did isn't just unethical, it's criminal. Identity misuse, fraudulent signature, and defamation. You can absolutely press charges." Hearing it said aloud, criminal made the air shift around me. For months, they'd made me feel like I was the crazy one, like I was overreacting, dramatic, unstable. But here was a professional saying the words I'd been too afraid to believe. Angela continued, "If you want, we can start by filing a cease and desist letter to her attorney and freeze the inheritance transfer until this is resolved." A freeze. The same kind of freeze they'd used against me, this time in reverse. I smiled for the first time in what felt like years. Not because I wanted revenge, but because finally the truth had a voice, mine. That night, I found myself cleaning out my old storage boxes, pictures, documents, letters. Buried at the bottom was a framed photo from years ago, all of us at my wedding. I looked at my mother in that picture, smiling, proud. And I whispered to the photo, "You raised me to be kind, Mom. But you forgot something. You also raised me to be strong." I didn't sleep that night. I stayed up building timelines, drafting notes, scanning signatures. Every sound of the printer felt like a heartbeat, steady, certain. By dawn, I had a complete digital folder labeled "Truth Will Speak." Inside were all the files, neatly organized, ready for legal submission. But I wasn't done, because while Angela handled the paperwork, I wanted something else, proof that couldn't be denied. Over the next week, I did something I never thought I'd do. I started playing detective. I visited the cabin resort again and asked for a copy of their internal records. The manager hesitated until I mentioned fraud and police report. He quickly printed everything. Then I compared my mother's signature on the cabin form to her old checks, ones she'd mailed me years ago for Emma's school fund. The difference was clear. A slight slant, a letter curve off by just enough to expose the forgery. That's when I realized this wasn't sloppy. It was intentional. She'd wanted it to look believable enough to get away with, but not believable enough for court, and that was her mistake. By the time Angela filed the official complaint, I was no longer the same person who'd cried at the sight of her mother's betrayal. I was focused, disciplined, methodical. I began journaling again, something I hadn't done since before my divorce. Not about the pain, but about the process. Each entry began with the same line, "I am not the victim of my family's lies. I am the proof they can't erase." That line became my mantra. I said it when I felt weak. I said it when I missed them. And I said it every night before bed, to remind myself that silence and strength can coexist. Because this fight wasn't about money anymore. It was about reclaiming the dignity they'd stolen. 2 weeks later, I got a call from the lawyer handling Mom's estate. He sounded uneasy. "MS Thompson, I received notice of your legal filing. I must inform you that your mother is reconsidering her position. She's requested a meeting." Of course she had. The moment she realized I wasn't bluffing, she wanted to talk. But this time, I wouldn't walk in crying or begging. I'd walk in with evidence, calm, prepared, unshakable, because something had changed. I didn't need her validation anymore. I didn't need to be the good daughter. I just needed to be the right one, the one who stood up for herself when everyone else tried to make her small. That night, as rain pattered against the windows, I watched Emma asleep beside her stuffed unicorn. I brushed her hair gently and whispered, "They tried to make me forget who I was, but you reminded me." And as I turned off the light, I caught my reflection in the window. For the first time in a long time, I didn't see a victim. I saw a woman standing on the edge of justice, calm, patient, and ready. Because sometimes revenge isn't about destroying someone. It's about rebuilding yourself so completely that they can never touch you again. And when they finally realize that, that's the real punishment. After the lawyer called and Mom requested a meeting, I knew two things. They still believed they controlled the narrative, and I had time, not much, but enough, time to turn every small injustice into a chain of proof they couldn't break. I made a list on a yellow legal pad and taped it to my kitchen cabinet. Collect, corroborate, expose, protect. That was the plan in 4 clean words. I stopped letting anger type for me. I opened folders, labeled them, and copied everything into 3 secure places: my laptop, an encrypted external drive, and Angela's secure client portal. What went into folder A? The forged cabin invoice with my mother's signature. The reservation confirmation showing Tanya's card, charged for $1,850. The police incident reports from the 2 visits. Screenshots of the family group chat, including the deleted messages I'd captured quickly. The inheritance notice that listed me as ineligible. What went into folder B? Voicemail recordings, the soft, manipulative calls from Mom and Tanya asking me to just pay. Photographs of the wedding album, the checks Mom had written years ago for handwriting comparison. Emails to the cabin manager and their internal logs. I printed key pages and kept them in a locked box at my apartment. Every item was dated, time, stamped, and cross-referenced. Angela taught me how to create a chain of custody, who touched the file and when, so nothing I turned over could be dismissed as tampered. Evidence is worthless if it's only emotional. So Angela recommended 2 experts, a handwriting analyst and a financial forensics specialist. The handwriting analyst, a burly woman named Diane, compared Mom's old checks to the signature on the cabin form. Diane didn't use drama. She used terms like stroke pressure and baseline drift. 2 hours later, she handed me a report that read like a verdict, discrepancies consistent with forgery. She highlighted 3 specific differences in loop formation and slant. The forensics expert Marcus dove into the cabin payments and bank trails. He pulled payment authorizations, credit card chargebacks, and IP logs from the resort's reservation system. Marcus traced the third-party authorization phone call to a cell tower ping near my mother's house on the day the booking was placed, not near mine. The transaction trail showed Tanya's card was charged. Then funds routed to accounts associated with a shell vendor used for other family events. Both reports were precise, unemotional, and damning. I printed them, added them to folder A, and breathed harder than I had in weeks. Angela drafted a strategy that made my head swim with its clarity, cease, and desist to Mom and Tanya's attorney demanding immediate reversal of the inheritance, restructuring, and rescindment of debt designation, motion for temporary injunction to freeze the estate transfer while the investigation continued, criminal referral, file the forgery and identity misuse evidence with the county prosecutor. We filed the injunction first. The court clerk's stamp felt like a lifeline. For the first time since the police had stood on my porch, I saw the law as an ally, not another stage for humiliation. Angela warned me, when the papers hit, they'll double down. Expect an attempt to gaslight, to distract, maybe to paint you as unstable. Keep everything public and documented. So I served the lawyers directly and asked the court to make the injunction temporary but immediate. I wanted the estate frozen before any more signatures or transfers could be finalized. Legal action would slow them, but I needed them to show their hands. Angela and I mapped pressure points, places where their pride and logistics intersected. Tanya's job: she managed a boutique that relied on community reputation. A legal paper trail describing her involvement in a family fraud would hurt her publicly. Angela suggested a discreet notice to her business counsel, advising of potential reputational risk. Mom's attorney, if the attorney realized this would become criminal, he might counsel a settlement. We served him copies of the forensic reports, cousins and extended family, quiet outreach. I messaged one cousin, a young woman who'd always been kind to me, and sent her a redacted summary. It didn't take long before whispers traveled back to Mom's circle. These moves weren't revenge for its own sake. They were tactical. Make the family feel the consequences of their choices, but channel it through systems that take abuse seriously. If they were coordinated, then their coordination would become their undoing. I set up a controlled scenario. I called Mom that Sunday, voice soft, playing the part of the desperate daughter. I asked if we could talk and settle this like a family. I wanted them to confess or slip or demand I just pay. To make it go away, I wanted them to repeat things I had already recorded as evidence. I recorded the whole conversation, legal in my state, with one-party consent, and let Angela know the gist. Mom's tone was syrupy, promising to fix things if I simply paid the debt and stayed quiet. Tanya chimed in, suggesting family arbitration, a classic tactic to bury matters privately. Their language matched the voicemail scripts we already had. Then I sent the recording to Angela. She transcribed key lines and added them to the motion to the prosecutor. It wasn't dramatic, it was surgical. They had weaponized my identity once. I didn't want that to happen again. I placed fraud alerts on my credit reports and ordered identity monitoring. I changed account passwords, notified banks, and let my employer's HR know a family dispute might attempt to contact them. I enrolled Emma in a school counseling session under family stress to ensure she had a safe adult to speak to if the family tried to manipulate her. Angela insisted this step wasn't optional. They're scrambling, she said. Control the collateral. Angela and I agreed. If the family refused to negotiate, the next move would be public exposure, not tabloid hysteria, but a controlled release to a local investigative reporter with the forensic reports, court filings, and a human narrative that could not be dismissed as drama. We made the packet, timeline, documents, expert reports, and an emotional statement from me about how this affected Emma. It was honest, restrained, and devastating in its truth. I didn't crave spectacle, but I did want the truth registered beyond the family ring, in a place where systems respond. Courts, banks, and public accountability. Through all this, they kept smiling. Mom sent one last message before the injunction. Claire, if you go public, we'll see how the court looks at a daughter who caused the family pain. Tanya texted passive-aggressively about community gossip. They believed their plan could survive legal scrutiny because families cover for each other. That overconfidence was my ally. 2 nights before the final injunction hearing, I sat on my living room floor with a cup of tea gone cold. The yellow notepad on my cabinet still read collect, corroborate, expose, protect. Every box checked made the next step clearer. Only one thing remained uncertain: how far they would go when cornered. Would they fold and apologize, scrambling for a settlement? Or would their pride and greed push them to a last, desperate move? Emma's stuffed unicorn lay beside me. I placed a hand on it and felt something else, not triumph, but protection. The work was surgical and slow, and it had to be. This wasn't about drama. It was about undoing an erasure. I whispered to myself, not with bravado but with calm resolve. They tried to cut me out of my life and my name. Now I'll make sure the record reads the truth. The hearing date was set. The family still smiled in the photos they posted online, but smiles can crack, and when they did, everyone would see what was under them. Evidence assembled, experts lined up, legal freezes incoming. The quiet mother has turned preparation into power. The next chapter will be the execution, the hearing, the exposure, and the moment their confidence collapses. The courthouse smelled like old wood and new paper, a place where quiet things become loud. The gallery was fuller than I expected. A few neighbors, the cabin manager, the handwriting analyst, my lawyer Angela, and, to my surprise, one cousin who'd quietly texted she couldn't stay away. My mother walked in like she owned the room, coiffed hair, pearls, a practiced expression of a woman who had never known consequence. Tanya hovered beside her, trying to look casual while fidgeting with a bracelet. Melissa's face was pale as paper. They sat like a little island of posture and performance. Across from them, I sat calm. I'd spent 2 sleepless weeks rehearsing nothing and learning everything. My hands didn't shake, my breath didn't race. I'd brought proof, experts, and the truth, and for the first time the scales felt balanced. The prosecutor opened first, voice steady and clean. He laid the case out like a single, unbroken line. Identity misuse, forgery, criminal intent to defraud, and a scheme to alter inheritance through manufactured debts. He didn't need to embellish. The documents did the work, each paper linked to the next like footprints in wet cement. Then Angela stood. She didn't yell. She didn't plead. She walked to the front and slid a thin folder onto the judge's bench. "Your Honor," she said, "we will prove by forensic evidence and witness testimony that Linda Thompson knowingly forged her daughter's signature, authorized a false debt, and manipulated estate documents to exclude her child." Short, surgical. The judge nodded and gestured for the first witness. Diane, the handwriting analyst, spoke slowly and simply. She explained the microscopic differences between Mom's genuine checks and the cabin form. Pressure points, letter formation, the hesitant stroke at the tail of a signature. She didn't accuse her. She reported what the ink revealed. Next, the cabin manager testified, eyes flicking occasionally to Tanya when he read the booking logs. He confirmed the charge, the authorization, and the third party form that bore Mom's signature and my license number. The manager's voice cracked when he said, "We assumed authorization was valid because of the ID provided." That sentence landed like a bell, an unintentional witness to how trust can be weaponized. Then Marcus, the forensic accountant, brought the room down into numbers that sounded like a confession. He traced the charge, the routing through a family-tied vendor, the timing of transactions, even a small transfer that then padded another account used for family events. It was methodical, boring, and devastating. When the defense called Mom to the stand, she looked smaller under oath than she had in social media photos. The pearls didn't glimmer. The practiced smile had a crack. Her voice tried to be strong, to claim memory lapses and maternal intent. But the prosecutor's questions were sharp. "Mrs. Thompson, did you sign this cabin authorization form?" "Yes," she said. "Did you provide Claire's driver's license number as identification?" I thought she'd said she agreed. "Did you intend to create a record that would justify excluding Claire from your estate?" She swallowed. "No, that would never." Then why, when the handwriting was compared, did the expert show significant discrepancies? She looked at Diane like a child caught in a classroom. The silence that followed had teeth. Then came the clincher. Angela played the recorded calls, Mom's syrupy offers to just pay. To make it go away, Tanya's insisting on arbitration. The phrase "we'll handle it like family," repeated like a chorus. In court, those recordings felt different, not private manipulation, but documented coercion. Tanya flinched on the playback. Mom's eyes filled with something that wasn't quite regret. The courtroom watched a family undo itself in real time. But the real cinematic moment came when the prosecutor requested a digital subpoena for the family group chat servers and phone records. The server logs, which my team had preserved and Angela had subpoenaed, revealed more than messages. They revealed deletions. They revealed an admin account erasing my replies when I tried to defend myself. The judge peered over his glasses as the clerk displayed a timeline. My responses appearing and then disappearing, all while Mom and Tanya posted external photos of family time. To create an alternate reality, Edward, there was no Edward here. This was a different kind of kingdom collapse, not a CEO, but the collapse of a matriarchal small-town dynasty. Their kingdom was rumors, curated images, and a shared script. Once the documents cracked, the script fell away. As witnesses wrapped, Angela stood again, more than ready. She didn't ask the judge for mercy. She asked for accountability. She walked the jury through the inheritance letter, showing the rescission clause tied to outstanding debts. Debts that had been fabricated, authorized by a forged signature, and weaponized to erase a child from her own mother's will. The defense tried to sway with emotion. They presented tearful appeals to family solidarity and suggested a misunderstanding. But the jury had read the documents. They had seen the handwriting comparison, the recordings, the forensic trails. The narrative had been rewritten with evidence, not gossip. When closing arguments ended, the quiet in the courtroom felt like a held breath. The jurors retreated. I sat, palms flat on my knees, and for the first time I let myself feel the weight of what I'd done. Not revenge for revenge's sake, but the writing of a ledger. They returned with a verdict that felt both simple and seismic, guilty on counts of forgery and identity misuse. The forewoman read, "We recommend restitution and restitution-related penalties." The judge's gavel came down like a judge's own last line in the family's edited script. Mom's face crumpled. Tanya's mouth opened and closed. Melissa hung her head. The courtroom that once witnessed family photos and polite applause now witnessed accountability. Outside, the press swarmed. The local paper's headline the next morning called it the Thompson forgery case and quoted the judge, "Family cannot be a shelter for fraud." The paper's ink felt like vindication, but also like a public airing of wounds. I didn't celebrate. I watched the rain on the courthouse steps and thought of Emma and her unicorn. The legal outcome was more than criminal findings. Angela moved swiftly to file the injunction consequences. The inheritance freeze remained in place. The estate trustee was ordered to halt any transfers. Banks placed holds on accounts pending restitution. Tanya's boutique faced an inquiry into business practices connected to family transfers. Their social standing frayed. Their control evaporated into paperwork and subpoenas and consequences they couldn't charm away. Inside, family dynamics altered permanently. Cousins who once nodded at family dinners now avoided the house. My mother, once the queen, spent nights on the phone with attorneys she could no longer manipulate. I stood on the courthouse steps after it was over, Emma asleep at my friend's house, safe. I held a small paper cup of coffee that had gone cold. The victory didn't warm me. It felt clean and precise and necessary. People asked if I felt vindictive. I didn't. I felt relieved, not because they suffered, but because truth had a place to land. My daughter would not inherit the lesson that being kind means being erased. She would not learn that family's loyalty is transactional. As I walked away, cameras clicking, strangers nodding with awkward looks of sympathy, I whispered into my coat like a benediction, "You tried to write me out of my life. The court wrote me back in." That was the climax. The courtroom was the arena where the quiet one's slow work became irreversible. The villains still had faces, but their masks were gone. And as the city swallowed the winter light, I felt something like peace, not the loud kind, but the honest kind that comes after the truth has had its say. 3 months passed since the verdict. 3 months since the gavel fell, sealing my family's fate and opening my own freedom. The storm was over, but the silence that followed was different this time. not the silence of fear or grief or humiliation, but peace. The local news eventually stopped covering the Thompson forgery case. The headlines faded, but the consequences didn't. Mom's reputation in our small town never recovered. The woman who used to be invited to every charity luncheon, every neighborhood committee, suddenly found herself ghosted, the same way she had ghosted my daughter's birthday. People whispered, not cruelly but carefully, pity mixed with disbelief, and in a strange, almost poetic way, she got exactly what she'd done to us: isolation. Tanya's boutique closed down after her business partner discovered financial irregularities. Melissa moved away quietly, taking a job out of state. She sent me one letter, no excuses, just 6 words written in shaky handwriting. "I'm sorry, you were right, always." I didn't respond. Some apologies are better left suspended in the air, acknowledged, not accepted. For a long time, I thought winning would feel like triumph, like fireworks, applause, or a Hollywood ending. But instead it felt still. The first morning after the trial, I woke up without anxiety for the first time in years. No buzzing phone, no lawyer calls, no fear that someone would twist my words. Just sunlight through the blinds and the sound of my daughter humming in the kitchen. She was making pancakes, burnt on one side, perfect on the other. When I walked in, she looked up and smiled, missing one front tooth. "Mommy," she said, "you look happy again." That sentence alone was worth every sleepless night, every court appearance, every tear I'd shed. Because justice isn't just about proving people wrong. It's about showing your child that truth always wins, even if it takes time. 2 weeks after the trial, I got a letter from Mom. It was handwritten again, but this time her handwriting shook. I sat at the same kitchen table where I once cried over her betrayal and read it slowly. "Claire, I don't expect forgiveness. I don't even expect you to read this. You were right. I did what I did out of pride. I wanted control because I thought I was losing my family. I told myself it was for your own good, but really it was for mine. I lost everything trying to keep my power, and you found yours by letting go. Tell Emma I'm sorry. Tell her I love her. Mom, I didn't cry. I didn't tear it up either. I folded it carefully and placed it in a small box labeled lessons. That's what it was, not closure, not reconciliation, just a lesson. Some people never realize the value of truth until it's the only thing they have left. I started a new job, one I loved. A small accounting firm hired me to lead their compliance department. When my boss handed me the contract, she said, "We know your story, Claire. We want people like you, people who don't back down." Those words healed something inside me that the court never could. I built a new home, not just walls and furniture, but a home built on peace, no yelling, no guilt, no manipulation, just me and Emma. We started our own traditions, home, made birthdays, small family picnics, laughter without fear that it might be used against us later. The past hadn't disappeared, but it had finally stopped defining us. Mom avoided jail through a plea deal and restitution agreement, but her social life, her entire kingdom, was gone. She sold her house to pay fines. Her friends vanished faster than her money. Tanya tried to start a new online store under a fake name, but word spread. The internet never forgets. Melissa, from what I hear, has been volunteering at a women's shelter, maybe trying to rebuild herself too. And me, I didn't chase revenge beyond what the court gave me. Because real revenge isn't about punishment. It's about peace. It's about waking up one day and realizing they no longer have the power to hurt you, because you stopped giving them permission to. One evening, months later, I took Emma to the park, the same one where she'd once asked, "Why doesn't Grandma like us?" She climbed onto the swings, her laughter filling the air, free and bright. A woman sitting nearby smiled at me and said, "You have such a happy little girl. You must be doing something right." I smiled back, eyes glistening. "Thank you," I said softly. "We worked hard for that happiness. Because it was work. It was rebuilding from ashes, not of money or reputation, but of trust. And that's the thing about betrayal. It teaches you what to protect next time. A month later, I visited Mom. Not out of guilt, but to end the story the right way. She looked smaller, older, and lonelier. When she saw me, she froze. Then she whispered, "You really came." I nodded, "Not for revenge, Mom, for closure." Her eyes welled up. "I ruined everything, didn't I?" I took a breath. "You didn't ruin everything. You just taught me what not to become." She looked away, tears sliding silently down her face. I didn't stay long. When I left, I felt light, like walking out of a storm into clear sunlight. That was the last time I saw her. A year later, a new mail arrived, not from her, but from the same cabin resort where this all began. A promotional flyer. "Family packages, pay together, stay together." I laughed, because for me, together had taken on a new meaning. Together wasn't blood, it was trust, it was truth. It was a mother and daughter rebuilding from scratch, stronger than any lie that tried to break them. As I watched Emma draw at the kitchen table, I whispered a line to myself, a truth I'd earned the hard way. They forged my name to take my inheritance, so I forged my strength to take my life back. That was my poetic justice. Not revenge, not ruin, just freedom, quiet, complete, and undeniable. If you've made it this far, if you've felt that sting of betrayal from someone who was supposed to love you, I want you to remember this: you are not weak because you trusted. You are strong because you still believe in truth even after being lied to. Family doesn't always mean love. Sometimes it means lessons, and sometimes losing people is how you find yourself. Have you ever been betrayed by someone close, someone who thought you'd stay quiet? Speech Balloon, share your story in the comments. Read like this video if you believe truth always wins, no matter how long it takes. Bell subscribe for more real life revenge stories that remind you silence isn't surrender, because in the end they built their lie to erase me, but I built my truth to outlive them.